Say his name and he appears. I believe in game sequels. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jay, welcome to Square Pegs, and that's right, it is time once again to talk about video game sequels, but not the big deal ones. Not like Mega Man 2 or Super Mario 2 or even Halo 2, you know? There's a lot of games that were really popular that have a 2 in them. But no, we are talking today about sequels to video games you might have forgotten about. And we're kicking things off on the original Xbox with a sequel to one of my favorite video game series, ToeJam and Earl III. For a series that originally started on the Genesis and a game that began its development course on the Dreamcast, ToeJam and Earl III is kind of a miracle that it even exists, because it probably shouldn't. It really probably shouldn't. But what we got was a really faithful translation of the original ToeJam and Earl experience, where it was that kind of roguelike level-by-level progression into a 3D environment on the Xbox. It's not great. It really isn't. There's definitely parts in here where it's like the ambition was way ahead of what the technology was going to allow, and there's some questionable things that are done in the game to provide humor that don't really land, that luckily we saw cleaned up with ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove on the Switch, PS4, and the Xbox One. But I still enjoy it. As someone who is a big fan of the ToeJam and Earl franchise, I do think this is a really cool game, and it's neat to see kind of the full picture and kind of the full arc spectrum of what the series was from the original ToeJam and Earl to today. I would not be surprised if me and my buddy Corey were like the only two people on the planet that knew about this game, because when you think of Serious Sam, you think of boomer shooters, you don't think of twin stick shooters. And Serious Sam's Bogus Detour is a twin stick shooter, and it's a damn good one too. I love Serious Sam. I actually suggested the Serious Sam collection for my Switch eShop video last month. I revel in just the overall ridiculousness and just the aggressive buffoonery that is Serious Sam, and it is played so perfectly well in Bogus Detour. I love twin stick shooters to begin with, so you slap a twin stick shooter onto the Serious Sam universe, and I'm already predisposed to enjoy it. But not only is this one just thriving in that ridiculous universe of Serious Sam, it plays brilliantly well too. It's got a really nice pixel art look, the soundtrack is wonderful, all the signature voiceover Sam lines are there, and the gameplay is top tier. Absolutely love this one. It's only available on Steam. I would pay money, literally, I would pay money to have this released on the Switch. If anyone at the Serious Sam company is hearing this, I would really love to see this released on the Switch. Please do so. Please. I'd like that. It's a fantastic game, though. If you have Steam, you owe it to yourself to play this one. This one I put on here with a little bit of caution, because I think most people probably do know about this one, especially if you're a fighting game fan. But if you're not, you may not realize that Garou Mark of the Wolves is a sequel, a direct sequel, to the Fatal Fury franchise. It takes place in the future. You get to play as an older Terry Bogard. He is training Rock Howard, who is Geese Howard's son. Geese Howard, of course, was one of the villains from the original Fatal Fury series, and it's marvelous. It's a fantastic SNK fighter that hits every single mark. One of the best fighters on the Dreamcast, in my opinion, honestly. On a system that was just loaded with excellent fighting games, Garou Mark of the Wolves is top tier upper echelon stuff. We're actually getting a sequel to it this year too, which is super cool. But Garou Mark of the Wolves is wonderful. If you are a fan of classic Fatal Fury fighting, or just really like the SNK pantheon of games, or you're looking to try a game in that universe that you've never played before, check this one out, because it is a wonderful title. You can find it currently on the Nintendo Switch in the ACA Neo Geo collection, and it's wonderful. It's a digital title. It's probably about $8, but you can find it on sale every once in a while, and it plays fantastically well on the Nintendo Switch. The Pandemonium series ain't going to win any awards for looks, probably not going to win any awards for controls, but where it excels is in charm. I first learned about this series, it was an ad, I want to say, in a PSN magazine back in the day, and it was something where I was just I was really curious about this series. And it's very basic, right? It's a runner. It's a runner and jumper, and that's all it is. It is a platformer and a collectathon. Simple as that. And you're on rails. It's not like an exploratory 3D platformer. It is a 3D platformer, but you don't go anywhere but on one plane. But it's a really clever title that does some really fun stuff with just style and attitude, and just, it does not take itself too seriously. And that carries over into the sequel, which is this one here, Pandemonium 2. The original was available on the PS1 and the Sega Saturn. This one is only available on the original PlayStation, but I just love it. It's a little clunky. There's definitely some inherent like PlayStation era jank involved here, but I think it's fun. I almost said it's a great game. That would be a lie. It is not a great game, but it is fun. Zoda's Revenge Star Tropics 2 is a game that I desperately want to love, because the original Star Tropics is something that just what means the world to me. It is one of my all-time favorite video games, and it's up there as far as favorite NES games goes for me. And I don't hate Zoda's Revenge, but there's just some stuff done in this game that just does not translate well for me and does not work as well as the original did. The additional movement options, by allowing Mike to move in multiple directions — he's actually able to move in all 8 directions now instead of just north, south, east, and west — is nice in theory, but it's a little sketchy, it's a little flighty. Him being able to change direction mid-jump is not executed well and makes the game incredibly difficult, especially if you're used to the original Star Tropics. But there's still an inherent charm here that makes me enjoy the game overall. It's not something that I'm going to prefer to play every single time. That's always going to be the original Star Tropics. But there's enough here with this game that I like it. And there's some neat trivia involved with it too. You know, this is the second to last released first-party game for the NES. Came out in 1994. So there's very much some technological leaps that were happening on other platforms and in other video games, especially on things that Nintendo was doing themselves with the SNES, where I look at it and I go, gosh, what might have been if this was released on the SNES instead of the Nintendo? But that's all it is. It's a what might have been. Still a fun game, though. One of the signature critiques, and it is a 100% valid critique of SSX On Tour, is the fact that it leans heavily into the custom character that you have to create and doesn't really focus on the personality of the SSX characters that have been featured in previous games, which is a shame because those characters were such a trademark and such a just key element of what made the SSX series fantastic. So a lot of people may have overlooked SSX On Tour because of that. But in particular, I want to call this one out specifically for the GameCube release, because while it does miss some of that kind of signature SSX experience by losing those character focuses, you get a really incredible game that plays brilliantly well and lets you ski downhill with Mario characters. It's amazing. Like, it released on the GameCube, PS2, Xbox, and the PSP, but in the GameCube version, you get to use Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach in the game, which is super awesome. They had an entire Nintendo-themed course in the GameCube release, which was amazing. It's a fantastic title. Like I said, it misses out on some things by not focusing on those SSX characters that we all knew, we all loved, and we all enjoyed, but the gameplay itself is amazing. Don't overlook this one just because it diverts a little bit from what made SSX great, because this game is still wonderful. Everybody knows Street Fighter. Everybody knows Street Fighter 2. I'm willing to bet most people know about Street Fighter 4. But do you know about Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition on the Nintendo 3DS? Because if you don't, you are missing out. This might be one of the most ambitious games that Capcom has ever done. They took Street Fighter 4, which is a fantastic fighter, and ported it onto the Nintendo 3DS, and it works. The circle pad plays great for fighting games. All of the face buttons are there, so you're not missing out on anything. They even include touchscreen controls where you can tap on the different buttons that are on there to perform different moves or to use different button combos. It's amazing. I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. There's even a version where you're able to share the game with other people that don't have it, and they can try it out as Ryu in the training mode. It's super cool. Fantastic title. I am ridiculously impressed that this exists, and I'm ridiculously impressed that it is as good as it is. I unapologetically love Double Dragon Neon. I think it's one of those games that just really got overlooked. There's a lot of stuff going for it that also, to me, it feels like it kind of goes against it as well. First off, it's not developed by the original team. This isn't something where it was we got the band back together. It was made by WayForward, so I can see some people kind of being turned off by that, because WayForward can be an acquired taste. Some of their stuff doesn't really jive with some people, but for me, Double Dragon Neon was like specifically made for me. This is a fantastic beat 'em up. It has an over-the-top presentation, like just a ridiculous example of what WayForward is capable of doing. And they paid reverence to the original Double Dragon arcade game while still putting their own unique stamp on things. Like Billy and Jimmy are kind of doofuses in this game. Everything is very 80s aesthetic, lots of neon, lots of cassette tapes to collect and things like that. But overall, the gameplay is spectacular. It is signature beat 'em up style. It is a signature Double Dragon experience, and it's just fantastic. It was released on the PS3 and the Xbox 360 back in the day, but it is available physically and digitally on the Nintendo Switch today, and you can get it on Steam as well. It's a wonderful title, though. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't played it. Longtime viewers of the channel will know that I'm a big fan of the Batman Arkham series, in particular Arkham Origins, which is my actual favorite game in the series, despite most people not really caring for it, and your opinion on that is completely valid, especially if it was formed when the game first launched, because it was a train wreck when it first released. Did you know that game had a sequel, though? And it's not a traditional Batman Arkham game where you're going around in a 3D environment. It's a 2.5D platformer, and it is really intriguing. Notice I don't say great. It is not a great game, but it is incredibly intriguing because it sets so much table for what happened in previous Arkham games that happened in the future from Arkham Origins, because they released things in a weird order for that series. But it's really cool to kind of go back in time and see the table setting that was made for this franchise that's set up here in Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate. I love this game. Warts and all. Like, there's definitely parts of this game that just do not work, that are just a little clunky, a little messy, but I really like the idea, and I like what they were able to translate from those 3D Arkham games into a 2D platformer. It's a very clever title. It's a little too ambitious at times, and it doesn't really stick the landing in a lot of ways, but I do think it is definitely worth playing, especially if you enjoy the Arkham series, because not having this game in your library and not being able to play it doesn't give you the full story. This is available originally on the 3DS and I believe the PlayStation Vita, but it's been released pretty much everywhere since then. It's out on the Wii U, it released on the PS3, the 360, and this is the Steam version you're seeing here. I really dig this one. It's a very interesting title. There were a lot of really interesting sequels on the Nintendo Wii that people may have overlooked or may have forgotten about, and one of the franchises that I think was just shown off on the Wii that really showed up on that platform was the Excite series. And Excitebots is a wonderful game. I've talked about it on the channel before, but I don't remember if I've talked about this one here. This is ExciteTruck. This is a racing game. It's an over-the-top, ridiculous racing game, but it is a racing game. You're able to do all kinds of crazy, interesting things in this. Like, this was actually the first game on the Wii that let you put in your own custom soundtrack if you had MP3s on an SD card, which is super cool. You have a series of scoring challenges that you're trying to accomplish. You're going to get graded on each track you go on. You guys have played Excite games before. You know what's going on here. And it's just fantastic. I really love it. There's a bunch of different modes in the game. There's the traditional, just kind of like Grand Prix mode like you get in like Mario Kart and other racing games that Nintendo does. There's a mirror mode. There's challenges. There's versus mode. It's a really, really solid game. I enjoy this one a lot. And it's so dirt cheap. So incredibly cheap to pick up. It shows that not everything on the Wii was shovelware and garbage. This game's excellent. There you have it, my friends. 10 more video game sequels you may have forgotten about. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite forgotten video game sequels are. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know as well if there are any games on here you didn't know about that you think look exciting, fun, and you want to play. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up down below. The engagement really helps the channel out. And if you are new here, consider subscribing. I'd love to have you stick around. And if you enjoyed this video, why not watch the one on screen right now where I talk about 10 more video game sequels you might have forgotten about. Till next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. Remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.